It's really an honor for me to be here this weekend. This was my home for 4 years back, way too many years ago. I came here 44 years ago to be a student at Ozark Christian College, and that was a life-changing experience for me. And so to come back, I remember the little building, which is, this is huge now compared to that, and I walked through everything yesterday, and just can't believe what God has done here. And I just have to say, y'all are like rabbits here. I mean, seriously, the last service, I thought, well, this must be their big one. And there's more people here this hour. And I said earlier, there are times when something happens in your life and your future walks in. That happened to me years ago. Cy's grandfather, Jerry Huffer, one of the most godly men I know. He was my band director. I was a trumpet player. He was an elder in our church. He was there Sunday school. This is back in the day when you went to church a lot. We were there Sunday morning, church Sunday night. Monday night was visitation night. Wednesday night was a Bible study night. They'd have a meal and Bible study. And then there was always an activity on Friday or Saturday night. And Mr. Huffer, that's what I knew him as, was there with his wife Kay and their whole family. Cy's dad, Jay, was just a little kid back then. And what an imprint on my heart that I got to spend. I drove to school every day with him in his truck. He had one of these old trucks. I told Cy, I asked him last night, I said, does your grandpa still have that old truck? And he said, I don't think so. It'd be worth $250,000 today. I mean, it's that amazing. But there were some, amazing days we even made it to school in that truck. It was that bad. But what my future walked in then, because I saw what godliness and godly leadership looks like. And a man who loves his family, and to now have a grandson and his beautiful wife who are the pastors of this great church. And just, it's not surprising to me. When I heard they were coming here, I was excited. And I would just tell you, whatever you've got to do to hang on to Cy and Monica, you need to do that. Because I get to travel a lot. I get to be around a lot of pastors, speak at a lot of pastors' conferences. And I'm just telling you, you have two of God's best here. And I believe when they became your pastor here, your future walked in a new way. I really do. And I said this the first service, I'll say it again. I think you need to get used to the fact you're going to be going to 3 services, and this place is going to be full 3 times. And you need to I hope you can already see that and already desire that. And by the way, if all of us were living this book and all of us were doing what God said to do, that would happen next week. So in a very real sense, your future is waiting on you. Right? It happened to me when I was 8 years old, 1963. How many of you know who Wayne Smith is? Used to be the pastor of Southland Christian Church. My grandparents were members of his church, and our family had gone up there on vacation to visit our grandparents, so we went to church at Southland Christian Church. And I remember going to this church. I was an 8-year-old kid. I remember the church was full. I remember the choir that sang. I remember the band they had. They didn't have drums, because back then God didn't allow drums in church, but he changed his mind, and it's okay now, so no. And, it is funny. I will just say this. It is funny what we fight over, right? Or what we say you can't do, and then years pass, and people say, hey, it's okay. It's like now I'm a grandfather. I've been a grandfather now for 7 years, and my grandkids, they get away with anything. We were at our house one night, and one of my grandsons, I took a little sugar, I put the sweet and low in my tea, and I wadded up a little packet, and I threw it at him at a restaurant. And so he threw it back at me. This one was a little kid. And his parents thought it was cute, and everybody thought it was cute. Well, one night at our house, he took some food off his plate and just flung it at me at our house. And everybody went nuts. His dad was going to spank him. His mom was screaming at him. Even my wife said, you don't do that at Grandpa and Mamie's house. And I go, why not? If you're a grandparent here today, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everything changes. Everything changes. But so we were there to visit our grandparents, and I remember this church, and I remember the man who preached, and he made everybody laugh, and he made everybody cry, and I remember at the end all the people that came forward to make decisions for Christ. And I remember as an 8-year-old kid, I thought, this is how church is supposed to be. And I was standing over against the wall. My parents, we were getting ready to leave, and Wayne Smith came and knelt down on one knee and took my hand, and he said, "Young man, you're going to pastor a great church someday." My future walked in. Now, I asked him years later, I said, "Why did you shake my hand? Why did you talk to me and not my 3 other brothers?" I said, "Was it because I was the fat one?" He said, "Probably." Wayne always struggled with his weight. But I didn't know my future walked in that day, but it did. It did. And I'm hoping that happens today for some folks here. I'm hoping that today your future walks in. You've read the book most likely. You've heard great messages. I've listened to all of them online. And I'm hoping that today your future walks in and you decide, you know what? I'm going to reach financial freedom in my life. I'm done with living life the way it's always been, and I want to do it the way God says, and I want to achieve this in my life. And especially to all of you young people who are here today. I mean, you have no idea how excited I am that you're here. Because if I could do it all over, I'll be 62 years of age in November. And it's gone by just like that. Just like that. And if I could do it all over again, and I could go back, and I could practice the 10-10-80 principle, 10% to God, 10% to savings, 80% to live on. And I could go back to doing that when I was working at McDonald's on Main Street in college. You'd be stunned by how much money I would have today and what I'd be able to do for God's kingdom. If I'd have just done that, and it would have been no harder then than it is now to apply those principles, but I just didn't do it. I wished I would have started sooner. So my prayer, I prayed before this service began, is that God will touch your heart and that your future will walk in. Okay? But for that to happen, you can't just listen to what I say. You know, most of us have books that we've read, we have sermons that we've heard, and there's all kinds of material that we've received, and we've even taken notes. But the fact of the matter is, none of that changes our life. It doesn't change our life until we change what we do. So I hope you'll do that today. What I want to do is just share real quickly with you the 7 greatest things I've ever learned about money. I travel all around the country. It's kind of funny to me. I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook 19 years ago. When we first got married, I let my wife handle all the finances because she came from a family that had more resources than the family I grew up in. My father was a preacher, and we never had anything. And it was that's just, the church said, God, you keep him humble, we'll keep him poor. And the church did a good job of that with my dad. And I remember when Christmas time came, I hated Christmas. I grew up hating Christmas because all my friends got new bicycles or new cars or new clothes or all kinds of nice stuff. And I might be lucky to get a three-pair package of underwear and soap on a rope. I absolutely grew up hating Christmas music because I hated Christmas time. I didn't want to go to school, and they had show and tell back then, and I had nothing to show. I had nothing to tell, and I despised every bit of that. I didn't have anything. And I talked to a couple of missionaries out in the lobby after the first service. And they said, yeah, that's kind of been the life we live. And one of the things that I've been doing in my last years is traveling around to churches and talking to pastors trying to change all that. Because serving God is the highest thing in the world you could do. And we ought to take care of God's servants and God's people. Our missionaries, we're going to bring our missionaries home. And I can say this now because Michael Schrage and his wife are not in this service. They were in the last service, and I started to say it. And when I saw them, I went, I can't say it. But I can say it now. We bring all of our missionaries home. We treat them like kings and queens. We do it about every 3 years. This time it's been 4 years because we postponed it. They'll all speak for us on Sunday. We'll give them a $1,000 honorarium for speaking one time. We also put them in nice hotel rooms. We have rental cars for them. We will also give them, on Saturday night we have a banquet, and we charge our people $75 to have a ticket to go to that banquet. $15 pays for the meal. $60 is a tax-deductible donation that helps us pay for the missions weekend. But for every one of those missionaries, we will also be giving them a brand new iPad, the most latest version of that. We'll also be giving them a couple of books to encourage them. And we'll give them each a check for $7,500 to them, not their mission, to them. Just to encourage them. And they will come up to the platform at that banquet, and tears will be streaming down their face, and they'll say, nobody treats us like this. And all I would say is everybody ought to treat them like that. Those are God's servants. They're on the front lines. But I grew up and I hated Christmas and I hated all that stuff. And when my wife and I got married, I said, hey, I need to change something. I want my kids to grow up loving Christmas. And whatever we have to do, I want them to love. And by the way, I love Christmas now. Christmas is like one of my favorite times of the whole year because God could change that. No matter what your upbringing has been, no matter what your trials and troubles have been, you can change that narrative. You just have to decide, I'm going to change this. And that's what we did in our life. And several years ago, we changed the narrative of finances. We were in debt. We bought the lie that everybody else bought. You can't have a car without debt. You can't have a house without debt. You can't have a business without debt. We did that, and so we got in debt on everything we had. And in 1999, I told our family, we're done. We're done with debt. I'm tired of living like this. And I got my Bible out, and I started finding those principles in Scripture, and the result of that is in the book, The ABCs of Financial Freedom. But I had the privilege to travel all over the country, talk to preachers, talk to churches, all that. And what I want to share with you is the 7 things that can absolutely change your life forever. You ready to go? Here's number 1. We'll go quickly. Your understanding of where it all comes from will either keep it coming or cut it all off. Now, we're talking about money. I want to be very clear. We're talking about money. We're talking about finances. Your understanding of where it all comes from will either keep it coming, in other words, you'll receive more of it, or you'll cut yourself off from it. So how does that work? Well, if we don't acknowledge that all of what we have is not ours, we're in trouble. So wait a minute, whose is it? Well, what does the Bible say? You know, the Bible's our source for faith and practice, and so we turn over to Psalm 24, verse 1, and Psalm 24, verse 1 says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. The Bible says everything belongs to God. That car in the parking lot's not yours, it's His. That house you stayed in last night's not yours, it's His. Those clothes you're wearing right now are not yours, they're His. Now listen to me. I'm not just talking about coming into church and say, oh God, it all belongs to you, and then go out and say, hey, what do you think of my hot ride here? What do you think of my cool house here? No, you and I have to get to the place where we acknowledge, God, I know all of this is yours. Because if you don't, you know what happens? You cut yourself off from it. So where do you get that? The Bible. Proverbs 17:16 says, of what use is money in the hands of a fool if he has no desire to get wisdom? Now you want the Texas version of that? God's saying, why in the world would I give you any more money when you've been acting like a fool with what I already gave you? Follow that? In the book, The ABCs, we talk about how I hate the word budget. I don't like the word budget. So I had to come up for a name for what our budget was. So I came up with Good file, G-O-O-D, getting out of debt. And I told our family, every time you hear the word good, anytime somebody says good, if you hear it on TV, just remember, we're getting out of debt. The Cameron family's getting out of debt. Just get it ingrained in you. It's good, it's good. We're getting out of debt. Well, when we got out of debt, I had to change my sheet. It said G-O-O-D, getting out of debt. Well, now we're out of debt. I mean, I guess I could have said gotten out of debt, but I thought I got to come up with some new thing. And so what I did, I came up with this really creative thing. It was going to be my BMW file. Building my wealth. We're out of debt now. So now, and you know, I always kind of had this thing for BMWs, and so I thought that was really cool until God tapped me on the shoulder and said, wait a minute, it's not yours. You forgot something. And so I just changed one letter, the M to O. Building our wealth. Bow. And it's amazing how the numbers on that sheet keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Because it's not mine. You see, 1 Timothy chapter 6 says, for we brought nothing into this world, and we shall take nothing out of this world. But it also says in 1 Timothy 6 that God has given us all things richly to enjoy. So literally, we had nothing to do with what we have. We won't take any of it with us. And in between, God gives us all things to richly enjoy. He doesn't have a problem with you having a nice car or a nice house or even a second house. He doesn't have a problem with you having an incredible business or taking a nice vacation. He wants you to enjoy those things between the time you got here and the time you're going to leave. He just wants you to do it in a way that honors Him. And that's the decision we have to make. And the way we do that is by acknowledging it all comes from Him and it all belongs to Him. That's number one. Now, by the way, in case you're tempted to think, that's no big deal, I don't have to do that. Wrong answer. You're in trouble. your financial difficulty, you will never get where you want to get. You'll never have what you want to have. You'll never achieve what you'd like to achieve if you don't live that way. In fact, if you don't get number one right, the rest of them you might as well just not even listen to. It's that important. It all belongs to God. It all comes from God. Here's number two. What you pursue will determine what you possess. What you pursue will determine what you possess. Here's a little, it's not a TED Talk, but it's kind of like that. Here's the short version of the way life works. You get whatever you go after. That's it. Period. You get whatever you go after. It's true. Some of you are sitting next to someone you pursued. You got them. Now, if you're not happy with that choice, I'm sorry, that's a whole different sermon. We'll have to deal with that some other time, okay? But that's the way it works. You say, well, I haven't gotten everything that I've pursued. Most of the things in your life that you go after, you get. Have you ever noticed how you always have money for the things you want? Or you always have time for something even though you're incredibly busy? Something you really want to do, somehow you find time for it? It's the way it works. What you pursue determines what you possess. For example, if you like to work out and take care of yourself, and you lift weights and you get on a treadmill or you whatever, you possess that today. And did you know you don't have to wear a sign around your neck that tells people, I love to work out, I love to take care of myself? They already know. They already know. Now, on the other hand, if you like pepperoni pizza and chocolate chip ice cream, and you possess that today, and again, you don't have to wear a sign. Because what you pursue determines your possessions. Now, here's how simple it is. If you want different possessions, you have to have different pursuits. Change your pursuits. Now, some people think the Bible is a collection of ancient mystical secrets, and only the trained professionals that went to Bible college or seminary could possibly understand them, and maybe we might learn 5 or 6 of them before we die, and that'd be great. That's not true. The Bible's a love letter from our Father that says, listen, if you want your life to really be more than you could ever dream, just do what I say. And in the Bible, there are some clear statements, clearer than anything else, that there's no way in the world people could miss them, but most people do. I call them secrets. You just wonder, wait a minute, how could there be a secret in the Bible if it's clear? It's right there in plain print and you can read it. Well, it's a secret because most people don't do it, apparently. Here's one of them, Matthew 6:33. Jesus said, seek first my Father's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. What things? All the things the Gentiles run after. Food, clothing, shelter, all the basic necessities of life. What shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? He said, the Father knows you need all those things. Just seek my Father and his kingdom first, and everything else will take care of itself. Now, you ready for this? What Jesus is saying in there is you need to make God and his kingdom, his church, his work, the number one pursuit of your life. Now, if I was to ask you this morning, how many of you here, God's number one, College Heights Christian Church, and the ministry here, and the missionaries here, this is the number one passion, driving passion of your life? There'd probably be some people who would say, yeah, that's me. But most people couldn't say that. And that's why you're struggling financially. It's not a financial thing, it's a faith thing. And Jesus said, here's how it works. You make my Father and his kingdom number one in your life. You watch how all that stuff takes care of itself. Now, I'll tell you what the business world tells you to do, especially multi-level marketing companies. They'll tell you to put a picture on your refrigerator of that car you want, and put a picture of that house you want, and put a picture of that exotic vacation you want, and keep it in front of you, those things that you want, and it's all going to happen for you. And that's the exact opposite of what the Bible says. By the way, if you've got those pictures on your refrigerator, take them off. Take them off. Make God the number one pursuit of your life, and all that other stuff will take care of itself. That's what Jesus said. What you pursue will determine what you possess. There's a verse in Deuteronomy. Yes, it's the Old Testament, but it's still part of the Bible. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, I did not come to abolish the law and the prophets. I came to fulfill them, literally to raise them to a higher standard. You know what it says in Deuteronomy 8:18? It says, remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms his covenant. In other words, God's the one that determines what's in your wallet and what's in your checking account and what's in your 401k. It's not you, it's not your ability, it's not your work, it's not me, it's not our brains, it's God. You want more? You have to put God first. You have to let God be the sole consuming passion of your life, because when He is, all that stuff will take care of itself. You know, I've lived enough years on this life, on this planet, to watch people who've made money and business and success the pursuits of their life, and in most cases they blow up their family, and in most cases they're not able. In fact, like Billy Graham said, he watched a lot of people in his life spend their life earning money and then spend the last years of their life using that money to pay for their health because they didn't take care of themselves. And a lot of people do that. It's a mad chase. It's like all of you young people today, you can't wait to get older. Can't wait to get older. Can't wait to get out of college and get married. And can't wait. And then listen, you get our age, you wish you could be young again. That's the way it works. So number one, your understanding of where it all comes from, will you keep it coming or cut it all off? Number two, what you pursue will determine what you possess. And I'd like to change it to say who you pursue. Make God the number one pursuit. Here's number three. What you spend will always be more important than what you earn. What you spend will always be more important than what you earn. And here's a little helpful hint for you. If you always spend more than what you make, you will never make enough. Never will. Most of you in this room today are making more money today than you ever made in your entire life. And you say, well, why can't I get ahead? It's like, and you say, well, Pastor, I can tell you why. Because I've got all these expenses. Well, reduce your expenses. Learn to live on less than what you make. In fact, I can tell everyone in this room, every single one of you, how to get a raise this week. Guaranteed raise. Say, great, what do I tell my boss? Nothing. Just don't spend all your money this week. You will give yourself an automatic raise. And you know what, next week? Don't spend all your money next week. You'll give yourself a raise next week. You can have a raise every single week of your life by reducing what you spend. And everybody can do that. There's no one in this room who could say, even someone that's living on Social Security, don't spend all that money. And you know what? You'll have more next month. Do it again the next month. You'll have double more for the third month. That's the way it works. What you spend is always more important than what you earn. It just takes a little discipline. Every week, I mean, every birthday gift I ever buy, I buy money out of my wallet. I don't take it out of a checkbook. I don't take it out of a savings account. Christmas gifts, money I don't spend in my wallet. I never spend all of my money. How many of you have a refrigerator at home? Raise your hand. Be honest. You're in church. Don't lie. Got a refrigerator at home. Now, is this the way it works? You go home after church today, you open that refrigerator, and there's 5 shelves, a couple of boxes, some stuff in the door, and you go, okay, we got to eat all this before the sun goes down. You go, Pastor, maybe they do that in Texas, but in Missouri, we don't do that. I mean, that'd be insane to eat all that food just because it's there. Well, it's equally insane to spend all that money just because it's there. Don't spend it all. Discipline yourself. Proverbs 13:18. He who ignores discipline comes to poverty and shame, but he who heeds correction is honored. Let's see, poverty and shame, honor. Poverty and shame, honor. Which one of those do we really want? Is it that hard? I don't even think you need to pray about that one. A little bit of discipline to not spend all you have, and you'll already be on your way to financial freedom. Here's number 4. Your obedience will determine your abundance. Your obedience will determine your abundance. You know, there are a lot of people in churches just like this one today, full of people just like you, who think somehow they can live any old way they want to during the week, go wherever they want, participate in whatever they want, sin however they want, and then somehow come to church on Sunday and pray one prayer, and God's going to forget all that and bless them. Isn't that amazing? Nobody walks in the church and says, God, I hope you'll curse me today. I hope you'll make next week the worst week of my entire life. God, I hope you'll take my business away from you. Hope you'll blow my family up. God, I don't want anything good from you. I just want bad stuff. Nobody prays that. Everyone comes to church and says, God, what I did this week, could you just forget that again? I promised last week that I wouldn't do it again, and I know I've done that every week this year, and I just, God, please, can you just forgive me, God, somehow, right? Your obedience determines your abundance. See, right there explains why some of you, if not many of you, are having financial problems because you think, well, I tithe, so shouldn't everything work? Even if you tithe, doesn't mean you can go out and do all the other stuff wrong. The obedient life leads to an abundant life. This is serious stuff. There is a God in heaven. There are universal laws that he has set in motion that you and I can't break, like the law of gravity. How dumb would it be to crawl up on top of this building and say, well, I'm going to defy the law of gravity? Well, go ahead, but you're also going to prove it. And the same thing's true with people who think they don't have to do what God says and they can still be blessed. All you're going to do is prove what God says is true. The obedient life leads to the abundant life. John 10:10, Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. That's why I came. That doesn't mean we're all going to be rich and drive Ferraris. Doesn't mean we're all going to go on exotic European vacations. That is not what that verse is talking about. It's talking about having a life of joy and no regrets. Wouldn't you like to have that kind of life? But here's the point. Most people are not living the abundant life. They're living the redundant life. You know what that is? This year's just like last year. And last year was just like the year before. Nothing ever changes. Who wants to be in a marriage like that? Who wants to be in a marriage where say if you're a man and you have a wife that never wants to improve and never wants to change and never wants to be better? Or let's say you're a wife and you have a husband and he never wants to change and he never wants to improve and he never wants to be better. Who wants to be in a marriage like that? You see, the funny part about it is women marry men believing they can change them. Men marry women believing they will never change. And both of them are wrong. Yeah. Wouldn't you want to be in a relationship where you have a spouse that it's getting better? You say, this year of our marriage is better than any year we've ever had. Because that's the kind of life that Jesus came for, that we would have an abundant life where everything gets better. You say that's impossible. No, it's biblical. We used to sing a song years ago. Some of you old timers may remember it. Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. Every day with Jesus, I love him more and more. Jesus saves and keeps me, and he's the one I'm waiting for. Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. You gonna sit there today and tell me that that's impossible? Friend, listen, I've known him too long. I became a Christian when I was 7 years old, and I want to tell you, I love him more today than I've ever loved him my entire life. And I love to read his word. I love to listen to him. I talk to him regularly. He talks to me. There are it seems like there's a lot more times when he's telling me stuff I've done wrong. And that's okay because I love him. I love telling other people about him. I love being around his people. It gets better. Listen, and I want to tell you something. Our family's been out of debt since November 15, 2001. I want to tell you, every single year's gotten better. This year's better than last year. My son, he's not even 35 years old. Last week, he made the last payment on his house, completely debt-free. My son. He said, Dad, I want to do it earlier than you did. I did it when I was 45. He did it when he's 34. And he said, Dad, you were right about all this. And see, this is the same son that when we were getting out of debt, when I had to come to Jesus meeting with our family, and I said, listen, life as you know, it's basically over. And what does that mean? Well, no more cable TV. And we're not getting a newspaper, and we're not going out to lunch or dinners, or we're not going to movies, and we're not buying birthday gifts, or we're not celebrating Christmas, exchanging gifts. What? We're not buying any new clothes. My wife said, you've ruined our kids' lives. My son said to me, I hate you. You've ruined my high school years. My whole family turned on me. And I said, well, the day will come when you love me. Don't count on it. And he stood in my office last week after he paid off his mortgage with tears in his eyes. And he goes, Dad, you were right. He goes, and you were also right about saying, I wish I'd done it quicker. Now my son travels around the country and he does ABC's weekends just like this. And I think his are probably more effective than mine because he tells it from the perspective, how would you like to be a high school kid and your dad comes in and says, life as you know, it's basically over. I thought it was the worst decision my dad ever made, but as it turned out, it was the best one. But see, you have to live, if you want to have the abundant life where every day gets better, you have to live the obedient life. Proverbs 3:9-10 says, honor the Lord with your wealth. That's this right here. That's what you got in your pocket, what you have in your purse. Honor the Lord with your wealth. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Honor him. Now, most church members, people who claim to be followers of Christ, they say, well, you know, when my barns are full and my vats brim over, then I'm going to do something great for God. It does not work that way. The obedient life leads to the abundant life. So I don't know all the stuff that I'm supposed to do for God. That's why you got to come back next week. That's why God gives you a pastor. Ephesians chapter 4 says God gave gifts to the church to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And every week you need to be here because you're going to learn something else and go, man, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Okay, I'll do that. And every week gets better, and every year it gets better. And friend, listen, we're never going to know it all. We're never going to understand it all. But all that we can, we ought to be doing. Here's number 5. The discipline of saving will be more important than the amount you save. The discipline of saving will be more important than the amount you save. Now, whenever I get to number 5, there's always somebody that says, you know, I was with you until your 5th point, and that was just kind of, you know, that doesn't make any sense. I said, really? Explain that to me. Well, you don't understand. I have these expenses. I have no extra money whatsoever. There's no way in the world I can put any money in savings. And I always say the same thing to people. Do you ever go to Starbucks? Do you know I had never been told by anyone until 2 years ago? There was a gentleman in Illinois, and he said, listen, I've never had a Starbucks. I've never been inside a Starbucks. And you know what I said to him? What's wrong with you? He goes, I've never been there. So I asked him, I said, have you ever been to a Sonic and he goes, oh yeah, I like their number 2 burger and all. I said, so you've been to Sonic. Do you ever get a large? Oh, I always get a large drink. I said, okay, let's talk about Sonic. Could you go without one of those drinks and put that money in savings? Here was his answer. I guess if I had to. No, it's you get to. And here's the deal. If you go without one Starbucks or one trip to Sonic or one movie, my wife and I, when we first got married, we went to movies every Friday night, every week. I didn't know Hollywood could make 52 good movies in a row. But as it turns out, we went to a lot of really bad movies. They were just horrible, but we were in the habit, you know, and when you're a young couple and you have to get a babysitter and you add dinner on top of that, you're talking about $75 to $100 for a weekend. We did it every weekend. I might be able to name you 3 movies. And I would say, yeah, one of them was funny. A couple of them there was action, but I can't remember the rest of them. But you know what, today, I wish I had taken all that money and put it in savings now. Because with compound interest, you know what a blessing is. Now, I'm not saying you can't go to movies, but here's the point. Something needs to go in savings every week. You need to discipline yourself and say, okay, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to start saving something every week. So, well, why are you so passionate about savings? Because the Bible teaches that. I'm passionate about everything the Bible teaches. Proverbs 13:11 says, dishonest money dwindles away. You know what dishonest money is? That's money that you cheat or steal or do something unbiblical or illegal to get. You know, you buy lottery tickets, or you go visit a casino, or you go out to Vegas and do a bunch of gambling. By the way, I want to be very clear. The Bible teaches we should not live our life by chance. We should live our life by choice. I choose to let God provide for me. So dishonest money, it's going to dwindle away. You're not going to be able to hang on to it. You might have it for a while. You know, some guy might have cheated somebody else in a business and made some money off of it, but it won't last. And I'm not just talking about eternity either. Definitely when we cross that goal line, it's over and he's in trouble. But the point is, that's not going to last. But the Bible says, he who gathers it little by little makes it grow. Little by little. It's not the amount. The amount's not important. It's the discipline. You know, my wife and I, when we got out of debt, we didn't have a whole lot. I mean, back in 2001, November, and I said, we need to start putting money in savings. And so we started putting in nothing. Because we had all this money now and all of our bills were paid, and we thought, we don't have any obligations. In fact, I remember I bought a friend of mine a golf membership, a $2,500 golf membership, so we could play golf together. We took 3 different couples on trips where we paid for the plane flight, the hotel, and because we just wanted to have fun. We had this money. And We went probably about 2 years, almost 3 years without putting anything in savings, and we were just enjoying doing all the stuff. Now, we supported both sets of parents. We gave them money every week. We supported missionaries. In fact, I have a preacher friend who got arrested for drug abuse on Easter Sunday night after preaching to a huge church on Sunday morning. 5 services. He was arrested at a Mr. Donut trying to buy cocaine. Ended up in a rehab center. My wife and I supported his wife and 2 kids for a whole year while he was trying to get his life put back together. Saved their marriage. So it's not about exotic European vacations and fast cars and all that kind of stuff. I drive a 2005 Toyota Camry. Now, if you saw it today, it looks like I bought it a week ago, except for the fact that it has a cassette player. And I know some of you are going, what in the world is that? And it has one of those, those wings on the back of it. No car has that anymore. I have that. But it's not about that. But I said, we got to start putting money in savings. I'd love to tell you that we put our whole house, our monthly mortgage payment in savings. We didn't do that. So you know what we started with? We started with $25 a week. Now it's about 2004, and $25 a week after we did that, the next year we went to $50 a week. Now, here's what I'll tell you. If you start with any amount, even if it's only $5 a week, I can guarantee you what will happen 1 year from today. If I come back here, I can guarantee you what will happen. That amount will be bigger. So how do you know that? Because it's not the amount, it's the discipline. If I told you the amount of money that my wife and I put in savings every week now, you'd say I was lying. You say, there's no way. You can't do that. Yes way. Because see, we got the discipline going. The amounts take care of themselves. So if we can teach our kids and our grandkids when they're young, or college students, college students say, well, I don't have any money. I've got, and I remember the same thing. I got to pay my school bill and all that. Just find $5 a week, put it in savings, and discipline yourself. I'm going to do that every week. Watch what happens. Just watch what happens. Because the discipline of saving will always be more important than the amount you save. Here's number 6. God will grow whatever you sow. God will grow whatever you sow. Now, every first-year farmer knows that. I mean, any farmer that keeps all the seed in the barn is called an idiot, right? I mean, you kind of miss the whole point of farming. The Bible says in Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, that will he also reap. So if you want beans, you better plant beans. If you want corn, you better plant corn. Whatever it is you want to reap, that's what you want to be sowing. In fact, Paul said, he who sows sparingly will reap sparingly. He who sows generously will reap generously. You're the one who determines that. So do I. So, if you've been sowing the wrong kind of stuff, like negativity and criticism, you got a harvest of that coming. You might not have seen it yet, but it's coming if that's what you sow. If you're always the one that can point out what's wrong. I always tell people on our staff, we have about 130 staff members, and I said, listen, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. Don't come into my office and tell me all the, you're a leader, find a solution, fix it. I tell all of our staff, your job every week is to help us move the ball down the field. You don't just come to work and answer emails and update your Facebook profile picture and then go to lunch with your friends and talk about the latest podcast you heard and then leave early because you got a soccer match that night with your little kids and you've done nothing, but you call it ministry. Do something to help this church reach more lost people for Christ, to build stronger saints. Be a part of all this. Are you doing that in your life? See, a lot of people, they're goofing off, and that's the harvest they got coming, a goof-off harvest, by the way, which is nothing. But what if you're doing something illegal, planting illegal seeds? A harvest is coming. What about immoral seeds? A harvest is coming. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that your name's going to be on the picture of the Joplin Globe. Is that still the name of the paper? I'm not saying you're going to be on CNN, but here's the deal. Every day there is somebody there. And it might be you. You say, well, I don't want that to happen. I want to stop all that. Then stop sowing the wrong stuff. Start sowing the right stuff. How about being the most positive person you can be? How about finding a word of encouragement to say to everybody? So instead of people going, oh, no, brother, he's here, they'll go, oh, great, he's here. How about being the best worker you can possibly be? I said this in the early service. The best workers in the whole tri-state area ought to be members of College Heights Christian Church. They ought to be calling Si saying, hey, listen, our business, you got any more College Heights people that we could hire? I mean, they're the best. They're always on time. They always do their job. They stay until the job is done. They're the most productive. They have the best attitude, best work ethic. We need some more of your College Heights people. You got any more of those? And then Si should have to say, yeah, we got plenty. How many you need? That'll be, sow those kind of seeds. And I'm telling you, a harvest will come. You know, you've been here for this whole series. You've heard 4 messages that were great and a 5th one now that's pretty average. But the fact of the matter is, if you listen to these messages and you say, okay, I'm gonna try to do it God's way, start sowing the right kind of seeds, I'm telling you, a harvest will come. Because God will grow whatever you sow. In fact, He won't just grow it, He will multiply it. He said the first man, first woman, be fruitful and what? Multiply. Did you know He told that to the animals too? Everything in the universe multiplies because that's the way God has built it. So if you want something to multiply in your life, sow that. Sow it and watch the harvest come. Here's the last one. Sustained generosity will be the guarantee for your sustained financial success. Sustained generosity will be the guarantee for your sustained financial success. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about tithing. Tithing is not generosity. When you bring the tithe into God's house, God's storehouse, by the way, your storehouse is College Heights Christian Church. If this is your primary place of feeding, this is your storehouse. So where do you get that? Well, let me use a very simple illustration. Let's say you go to Burger King and you order a Whopper with cheese, everything on it, and large fries and a large Diet Coke. Isn't that how it works, right? And they bring that food to you, and you take it, and you start to leave, and they say, whoa, wait a minute, ma'am. Wait a minute, sir. You haven't paid for your food. You say, oh, no, you don't understand. I eat here at Burger King, but I give at McDonald's. They'll jump over that counter, and they'll tackle you. You're not going to eat our food. Pay someplace. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with God either. If this is your primary place of spiritual feeding, this is your storehouse. And God says in Malachi chapter 3, verse 10, bring the whole tithe into my storehouse, that my house may be full. See if I will not, test me in this, says the Lord Almighty. See if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing you don't have room enough for it. In other words, God says, if you'll bring the tithe, and by the way, the tithe is 10%. You know, it's amazing to me, the people that understand giving 20% to a waitress at Chili's don't understand giving 10% to God. I've not quite figured that one out. I mean, if you were at a restaurant and you say, well, hey, I'm just going to give them $1 today, your friends would go, you can't do that. That's wrong. So why in the church do we say to people, oh, just give whatever you want. It's no big deal. If a quarter is good for you, give a quarter. That's not what God says. So you bring the tithe, the whole tithe. And when you tithe, by the way, you get on the spout where all of God's blessings come out. Now, if you're not tithing, you're over here somewhere. You have to bless yourself. I don't want that. I want God's blessing. And not only does God promise to bless us with more than enough that we have room for, you know why He does that? So you'll have enough to give to other people and other ministries and other things. That's where generosity comes in. But He also says in the next verse, He will rebuke the devourer. Anybody know who the devourer is? It's the devil. He says, I'll keep him. I'll protect what you have and not let him touch it. By the way, in case you don't believe that happens, read the book of Job. Satan went to God and said, listen, the only reason why I trust you is because he has so much. And God says, all right, that's not true. I know Job's heart. Job loves me because of who I am. So you can touch anything but his life. And that's exactly what the devil did. Took everything away from him. Now, by the way, even if you lose stuff, God will restore. Read the 42nd chapter of Job. He had twice as much before. God's not going to be mocked. David said it this way in Psalm 37:25. I've been young and I've been old, yet I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. God will take care of his people. So tithing is not generosity. That's obedience. You're bringing the tithe because God said to do it. And by the way, don't say, well, it's not in the New Testament. Yes, it is. How many of you know who Michael Jordan is? Michael Jordan. What was the number on his jersey? 23. It's the Michael Jordan verse. You need to remember this. You'll never forget it now. Michael Jordan verse. Matthew 23:23. Jesus said to the Pharisees, you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, the 3 smallest spices known to man, but you've neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have done the former without neglecting the latter. Now, if they weren't supposed to be tithing, Jesus would have said, whoa, wait, what in the world are you doing tithing? That's an Old Testament deal. You don't need to do that. He didn't say that. He said, you should have done that. Tithe or tenth, the word is used 7 times, the 7th chapter of Hebrews. Read it. Where Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek, who was a forerunner or a pre-incarnate manifestation of Jesus Christ. In fact, if you want to hear a phenomenal sermon on that, go to our website, look up Mark Moore. He's preached a message on tithing on that very issue at our church. One of the best messages I've ever heard in my entire life on tithing. Tithing is not generosity, it's obedience. By the way, if you're not tithing, you're not on the spout where God's blessings come out and everything you already have is exposed for the devil to do whatever he wants. That's not a smart place to be. I've always been a faithful tither. In fact, I can stand before you today with no guile, with no reservation, no hypocrisy whatsoever, and say to you that ever since I've been a Christian, I have always been faithful to God in tithing. Always. I was raised in a home where they taught me that. I've done that my entire life. If I get a tax refund, I even tithe on that. And people say, well, you're double tithing on that money. And I say, your point is what? That's all. I wish I could say that for every area of my life. I wish I could say that about prayer. I wish I could say that about soul winning. I wish I could say that about personal holiness. I wish I could say that about relationships. I can't, but about tithing I can. But as I said earlier, it's not just tithing. That's not a free pass. You know, but it doesn't matter what else you do as long as you're a tither, everything's good. No, that's just one thing that we need to be doing. But that's not generosity. You say, what's generosity? It's beyond that. I'm past time, so let me just tell you a quick story. Whenever I go on ABC's weekends, I always try to get home Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, so I can be with my family, have dinner. And I'm gone a lot, but as long as I get home and I can catch up with them over the day and spend time with them, they're good with that. They don't mind me being gone on the weekend. And several years ago, I had flown back to Dallas, and my wife and two daughters picked me up at the airport, and we went to a fast food restaurant called On the Border. I don't know if they have those here or not. It's a Mexican restaurant, good food. The minute we sat down, my daughter said, our waitress is a single mom. I go, how do you know that? They go, Dad. I said to Janice, how do they know that? She goes, Barry. I go, okay, whatever. So when our bill came, and it was $24 and something, I said to my daughters, my wife, since it's so obvious that our waitress is a single mom, do you want to bless her? And they go, yeah, let's do. Now in our family, when we want to bless somebody, that means that we all carry them. We carry up folded $100 bills. And whenever the Lord lays it on our heart to bless somebody, we'll hand it to them. And it may be somebody on an airplane. It may be somebody at a store. It may be a restaurant where we're eating. When God prompts us to do that, just something our family does. Our entire family does. So I said, you want to really bless her? They go, what does that mean? I go, watch. So I pulled out $300 bills. And you know the bill thing they give you, the leather deal? I put the $300 bills in there, and our waitress came. Is there anything else you need? We said, no. And I handed it to her and thanked her. And we got up, put our coats on. We were walking out the door. We couldn't have taken maybe 4 or 5 steps. And she goes, sir, wait a minute, sir. You made a mistake. And I said, a mistake? About what? And she pulls out these $300 bills. She goes, I think you thought these were $10 bills. These are $100 bills. Everybody in the restaurant can hear it. And I said, no, ma'am, that's not a mistake. Well, why would you do that? And I said, well, we wanted to bless you. And she literally stepped back and said, well, why would you want to bless me? And I said, because we're Christians. You need to come sit down. She goes, yes. So we sat down in our coats, with all these dirty dishes. She said, I've got to tell you a story. She sat down at the table with us. She goes, I know y'all don't know me, but I'm a single mom. I said, obviously. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. And she said, see that little boy over there? That's my son. She says, I hope he didn't bother you. And he hadn't bothered us. He did knock the sugar dispenser over and spill a drink, some other things. But he didn't really bother us. She said, because I'm a single mom, if I don't work, I can't pay my bills. And today my babysitter didn't show up. And she goes, I called my boss on the phone, and I said, my babysitter didn't show up. And he said, that's not my problem. If you're not here, you're fired. And she goes, and I just started going back to church. And I'm trying to do what God wants me to do. And I said, God, what do I do now? And she said, I don't know why, but I dialed my boss again, and he was still on the phone. And she said, you know that little area in the restaurant where there's kind of a little nook there? I can put my son there, and he won't bother any of the other patrons. And just let me come work tonight, and I'll find another babysitter tomorrow. And she said, and the boss said, okay, this one time. But if he bothers one of the people that come in, one of our customers, you're fired. And she goes, and so I've been here all night, and I'm almost done. I've only got like an hour left. And she goes, and now you people do this. What am I supposed to do with this? And I did say this. I said, well, take your son to a nice restaurant. Well, because we were in a fast food restaurant, and I followed up with her, or buy him some shoes or something. And well, anyway, so she hugged us, and we walked out. And by the way, I didn't tell her I was a pastor. I didn't invite her to Crossroads. I know I get an F for both of those. But we were in the car driving home, and my youngest daughter, Kelly, and my oldest daughter, Katie, and my wife. And I was driving, and my youngest daughter, Kelly, who at the time was in junior high, she goes, Dad, can I ask you a question? I said, sure, honey, what is it? She goes, Dad, do you think we were the only Christians that ate in that restaurant tonight? And the Holy Spirit settled in our car. And I said, no, honey, I'm pretty sure we weren't the only Christians. And not another word was said all the way home. But I think it's the greatest sermon I've ever heard on generosity in my life. You see what that lady should have said to us? She should have said, you got to be kidding. Really? Can you stay here for a moment? I'll be right back. And then she goes and over to her little break area and comes out with this bag, and she opens it up and says, look at this thing full of money. This is from all kinds of Christian people tonight trying to help me out. What is up with this? You got to tell me about your God. You got to tell me about your church. I've never had any experience like this in my entire life. But you know why that doesn't happen? Because we're not generous. And you know why we're not generous? Because we haven't been following God's principles for our finances. You see, all of us ought to be that way. And when we start living generously, there's a great verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 9:11. It's my 9:11 verse. The Bible says you will be made rich in every way so you can be generous on every occasion. You say, you can't live like that. Nobody can live like that. I live like that. My whole family lives like that. We got a ton of people in our church who are out of debt. They live like that now. When you get to the place where you owe no man anything except love, you can be generous on every occasion. And you know what? When we're generous like that to everyone we interact with, people will be knocking the doors down to be a part of God's church. So my challenge to you is this. Did your future walk in today? Are you going to do what God says to do? The people I know and the people I meet, my own testimony would be, I wish I'd have done it a long time ago. And for some of you, it's way past time. And I just want to encourage you today, do what God says. I tell young preachers all the time, keep showing up, keep doing what's right, watch what God does. And if you'll do that too, it won't just be financial freedom you achieve. It'll be joy unspeakable, full of glory. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the privilege to be here this weekend. And God, thank you for this great church and all the people here, the leaders, for Cy and Monica and the staff, the elders, the deacons, God, everybody. And God, I just thank you for what's going on here. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen now, because this church will never be the same after this series. And God, there are people here today, just as there were in the last service, their future walked in this series. And they're going to determine in their life, God, I'm going to follow your principles, and I'm going to do it your way. And God, my only prayer is I pray that you would bless them the same way you blessed Janice and me and Katie and Matt and Kelly and Will and Levi. And God, they'd be just as overwhelmed as we are at what an incredible God we have. And Father, I pray for this great church that as they have done this series together and the leaders have made the commitment to let's get this right. Father, I pray that you would literally rip open the floodgates of heaven and unleash a financial revival on this congregation, that they would get to the place where they would run out of dreams before they'd ever run out of resources again. And God, we promise we will give you all the glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.